Sorry to bother you, but we had to come and tell you how much we really enjoyed the show, didn't we, Garth?
Oh, thanks.
We're not mental or anything, so don't be afraid. My name is Wayne, and this is Garth.
Nice to meet you guys.
So, do you come to Milwaukee often?
Well, I'm a regular visitor here, but Milwaukee has certainly had its share of visitors. The French missionaries and explorers were coming here as early as the late 1600s to trade with the Native Americans.
In fact, isn't Milwaukee an Indian name?
Yes, Pete, it is. Actually, it's pronounced Miliwake, which is Algonquin for the good land.
I was not aware of that.
I think one of the most interesting aspects of Milwaukee is the fact that it's the only major American city to have ever elected 3 socialist mayors.
Does this guy know how to party or what?
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhood's podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and we have made our way to the Midwest on our cinematic journey across America. On this episode, we are in the land of Lincoln, despite our 16th president having been born in Kentucky. This state is best known for its nuclear power plants, the first McDonald's, the Bean, and deep dish pizza. Many movies take place in this state's most populous city, such as Bad Moms, Bad Teacher, Bad Santa 2, and the Sean Penn Bad Boys, but not the Will Smith Martin Lawrence Bad Boys. On this episode, we're in the second most populous city in the state, Aurora, Illinois, home of Stan Mikita's Donuts, the Gas Works, and a haunted amusement park. Oh, and it's the filming location of the hottest public access show around, Wayne's World. Welcome to the Wayne's World episode. With me, as always, is my brother Dan. Party on, Dan.
Party on, John.
Party time, excellent. I've been so excited to do this episode. I feel like it's a long time. 215 episodes in, we're finally getting to it.
Yes, but it was one of those where, like, we were just waiting for the time to be right and the stars to align. And of course, as we're on our road trip through America and we're going through Illinois and perhaps avoiding Chicago, but not the greater Chicago metropolitan area, the home of pretty much every John Hughes character.
Right. Yeah.
Can't really talk about. You have to at least acknowledge John Hughes as we're talking about Illinois and avoid and not talking about a John Hughes movie, but talking instead about Wayne's World.
Sure. I mean, just staying on the John Hughes topic for a second, Shermer, Illinois. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shermer.
And you know, to pick just one John Hughes movie to cover to represent the state of Illinois almost feels like you're not giving the whole collection of the movies the proper due. So you really do have to go outside of that area. And I know Aurora is not too far from, Chicago, but it's at least its own city.
It's also, and something that I like about Wayne's World is that it makes a point of placing the value on Aurora and not just wanting to make it big in Chicago, but to make Aurora big. And as they say in Wayne's World too, put it on the map, to put Aurora on the map.
Absolutely. I've actually only been to Illinois one time, and I remember being out in the Naperville area, which is a suburb of Chicago, and seeing the signs on the road that said, like, Aurora 10 miles, things like that. And I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like,
wow,
how many people can, I guess prior to the 90s be like excited to see Aurora, Illinois for pop culture reasons.
Right. Yeah. It's, but now, I mean, I imagine amongst a certain group of people, mostly probably in our generation, Aurora is not necessarily a destination, but I'd imagine that a lot of people going to Chicago, if they have the opportunity, might take a little side trip to Aurora just to say, hey, I've been there. I've seen what it's all about.
Unfortunately, it's not like there's actually a Stan Mikita's Donuts there, or the Gasworks, or Comrades, if we're talking Wayne's World 2. But it would be cool if those things did exist after the movie came out, to pay homage.
So
to
cut
the
to the chase. Pop-ups. We're going to have pop-ups.
I love doing a pop-up restaurant, but this would be like a pop-up city. It's like you've got all the different elements to it, but we're not there yet. Oh,
I'm all like, why don't I'm all like, yes, let's jump into that. Like, yes, make your city an Aurora.
Yeah, little Aurora.
Why not?
You know what? Aurora. Buy up like a ghost town, one of those places where it's like, there's bad soil, so nothing can grow there. There's no connecting roads. No one wants to be there. Just find this like weirdo dump of a place, and for like one weekend, I guess that's kind of like a fire festival situation waiting to happen.
It kind of is, though it gives me an idea of wouldn't it be great? And it becomes more of a Westworld situation, but where like it for a week each month, it was a town, a different iconic town from a movie.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I mean, because then that way you've got like a good 3 weeks to, I mean, I imagine that there are people out there who could figure out how to make it where it's like, okay, we're going to make our own, because it's also not like if you're making your own little Aurora, like, I don't think anyone's going to care about the geography of like, where the Channel 10 studios are located versus Makita's and all that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could do that. Like, what are some, like, Hill Valley?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, actually go to the soda shop, or it depends on which. It could be Hill Valley you could do Hill Valley like 3 times a year. Really?
Yeah.
You do Old West Hill Valley.
You could also do, and I realize that this exists in a very small form, but a Twin Peaks, like a full, more than just the R&R diner, Tweeds, as it actually is known, but like have an intentional Twin Peaks village pop up.
Right.
A real Great Northern, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Great Northern that on the inside looks like the Great Northern.
Exactly.
And having stayed at the Snoqualmie Lodge, aka the Great Northern, I can attest to the fact that inside it looked nothing like it. But it is quite something.
That's
to put on the Angelo Badalamenti score and to drive through the Snoqualmie Falls and just through that area, which of course the town of, and not to get on a Twin Peaks tangent here, but I think the actual the town of Twin Peaks geographically is located in the eastern part of the state. I think they established that in the Showtime return, like the season 3, which I thought was fantastic.
I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. I think they established there, or possibly in the movie. Actually, I think it was in Fire Walk with Me that they established that it's actually closer to Spokane. But
I need to give Fire Walk with Me another watch.
It's worth watching. I watched it again after the return, and it is definitely worth. It's worth coming back to. It's especially worth coming back to when you're not like seeing it for the first time and like having some expectation that's not going to be met. It's better to watch it again. But like, it's a lot of the really weird stuff that happens in the return is also in the Fire Walk with Me. So there we go. Our Twin Peaks.
Well,
tangent.
we can save that for our Washington episode. For now, we're on our Illinois episode.
David Lynch is a character done by a different Canadian comedian who likes to do characters and put on wigs and prosthetics. Give it a moment. No.
No.
Martin Short in Jiminy Glick goes in Lalawood. He's David Lynch.
I think I've only seen Lalawood once, and that's when I definitely had to rewatch because I love Jiminy Glick.
Oh, it's one of those I will chuckle every single time.
I feel like in order to be in show business at all, you need to have a David Lynch impression to be able to do the voice.
You have to be able to talk it's almost like doing William Devane.
Yeah, it's very close to Devane. So when I lived in Los Angeles,
maybe when I do it, I don't know.
When I lived in Los Angeles, I loved listening to a now defunct radio station, Indie 103.1. And okay, the morning show was amazing.
Was it Handsome Dan?
No, it was not Handsome Dan, not Mr. Scream, but we did have Timothy Oliphant doing the sports, and we had David Lynch doing the weather.
I remember this. Yes.
David Lynch did the weather every day, and I loved it because it was just like, it's a high of 74 degrees, very still. He'd always say very still. And I loved that.
That is very Lynchian. Yeah, he's a fascinating. And I guess I said we were done with the David Lynch tangent, but
I guess not.
Another interesting addition here is that in a roundabout way, we received a gift for our younger child who's 19 months old from David Lynch. It is so my wife works, I will just say, for a corporation and for their foundation, and has had dealings with the David Lynch Foundation. Like they've done a lot with the David Lynch. In fact, one of their CEOs was like did transcendental meditation like with David Lynch. So imagine how thrilled I was the day that we got the gift from the David Lynch Foundation. And Amazing. That I was just like, oh God, in some small way, we got a baby gift from David Lynch. And
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a different director, Penelope Spheris. So, yes, Dan, it's well documented. This is really Penelope Spheris's first, narrative, comedy. Of course, later she does like Black Sheep, and she's around. But Dan, have you ever seen The Decline of Western Civilization?
I have never seen it. No.
Okay. Have
you? I'm guessing you have.
I watched part 2 yesterday because part 2 is The Metal Years, which I believe is why she was brought on to direct this. And Dan, holy shit, it's so good.
Yeah.
The way that she plays with form for documentary, giving different, metal stars of different, I don't know, places in their career. You have a lot of like the really young ones who are just kind of starting out and don't know where their future's going. Then you have Aerosmith, who's been around they're already sober at this point. And then you've got Ozzy Osbourne, and you have Lemmy, and you have Kiss. And it's fascinating to watch them just talk about their lives in 1988. We know now where things have gone with a lot of them, some of whom are still very active. And the way that Penelope Spheris actually orchestrates the interviews is really cool because it really goes against form. She has them set up as, some of the, especially younger ones, are just against a generic colored background. Some of them are at a club somewhere. But we have Gene Simmons, who's just standing in a lingerie store next to a rack of lingerie as like women are shopping. And we have Paul Stanley in like a bird's eye view shot, and he's laying on a bed with 3 women in lingerie, and they're just kind of like all on top of each other and placed just perfectly so. It's amazing. We have Alice Cooper, who's he's like on a stage with a tombstone and like a bloody doll, head and everything and being perfect, and also him being like this incredibly articulate, well-spoken gentleman. And we have Ozzy Osbourne, and he's like in a very small, quaint looking kitchen, and he's cooking himself breakfast, like eggs and bacon, and he's got like this glass kettle that's on the stove, and it's like boiling and the steam's coming out, and he's speaking, and what he's saying is very poignant and more articulate than we are used to hearing him nowadays. But it just goes to show you, like, this guy is not just the person that we saw on the Osbournes. There's a lot more depth to him. Like, he's a very thoughtful person. And I know that the Osbournes have a podcast now, and I've seen a lot of like video clips from it, and it's just like, I feel like he's more kind of with it, and it's a lot of fun to kind of see their dynamics. But he's amazing in this interview, and he's just wearing this like robe with like an animal print on it, and he's like, he pours, like, at one point he pours orange juice into a glass, and it just clearly spills all over the table, but he's just, doing his thing. And it's so clear why Penelope Spheeris was kind of plucked from the documentary world to do a movie about headbangers. She knows that world. I think that it's like, a lot of people can do a comedy movie that's taken from an SNL sketch that's popular. This movie's going to do well no matter what, but it's going to be great with the right person behind the wheel. And for that, you really need somebody who understands this subculture. And it shows. And I love it. I don't know if we're going to have any video poster from this, but right behind me, I've got a little Crucial Taunt poster. I'm wearing a Del Preston t-shirt, which we'll get into when we talk about Wayne's World 2. Dan, do you remember when you first saw Wayne's World?
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain the first time I saw Wayne's World was the first time you saw Wayne's World. I'm pretty sure we went, like, I think, like, we went not as a family, but, like, I think there was, like, a vacation from school, because I think it came out February 92.
Well, according to my Crucial Taunt poster, that says July 25th, 1992, but I don't know if that's based on anything.
No, it came out February 14th, 1992.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day.
So, indeed. And so I don't know if it was just like it was still playing a few weeks later when whatever it was, we were off from school, President's Day, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, like, we went, like, Mom took you, me, and Scott, our brother. For those listening for the first time, we are brothers. Hence the reason why I referred to someone named Mom, who is our mother. So,
much like Wayne, at the time we lived with our mother.
Yes. Though none of us were in our 20s.
None of us had another option.
No.
Legally speaking. Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it, and I remember enjoying it. I remember it was a big thing, and the Bohemian Rhapsody was just that scene and that song, and it like Queen kind of blew up again.
Yeah, that song was number 2 on the charts after Wayne's World came out, and that song had come out years before.
1975.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing. And Mike Myers just had the vision that was the right song. It's well documented.
It's also well documented that he did not think the scene was going to work. Didn't think the scene was funny, and like really fought about. It's not news that he clashed with Penelope Spheeris a lot. Maybe not a lot, that might be unfair, but that they definitely had their creative differences. Some of it stemming from the fact that, as you said, she understood this headbanger world, and he actually didn't. He didn't. really
Yeah.
come from that.
So
Not as much. She was immersed in it.
Yeah. He based the character, which was a Second City character of his before SNL. He based it on people that he knew in Canada. And I know that, like, he was saying that Bohemian Rhapsody was the song that he and his friends would headbang to in the car. And I watched there was this thing that happened in 2020. Do you remember, Dan, 2020 and how weird it was?
Oh,
the year
man.
2020. So the year 2020 was super weird. And on YouTube, there was a show that Josh Gad did called Reunited Apart. And it was like through Zoom. And what he did is he reunited casts from movies.
Right.
And he did one for Wayne's World. And it was amazing, the people that he got on there. Dan, to give you an idea of, of course he had Dana Carvey and Mike Myers and Penelope Spheris, but he also had like a few of the associate producers. He also had the suck cut guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that guy. That guy's been around. That guy has done a lot.
Yeah.
I know him. I remember him best as Steve, the reporter from The West Wing.
Oh, really? Yeah, Charles Noland. Yeah, and so it's like even like small characters like the guy from the Suck Cut commercial. Ione Skye was there, of course.
Right.
People that you kind of forget are even in it because she's only in the very beginning. So it was really great to see everybody come together. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were kind of ones to introduce things. Alice Cooper was there. Alice Cooper was great because he made, you remember 2020, everyone was crazy about Zoom backgrounds. He made his background.
Oh, yeah.
He made his background that like Delaware, like postcard from when they do the, hi, I'm in Delaware.
I'm in Delaware. Yeah. Yeah. Alice Cooper is amazing. Alice Cooper is amazing in this movie. Alice Cooper just in general seems to be amazing. Every new thing I learn about Alice Cooper makes me think he's more amazing. So other than the fact that I'm not a huge fan of his music per se, I am a huge fan of Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Was he
his scene I would venture to say that upon first seeing the movie, and I liked it when I remember liking it, but didn't love it. But the Alice Cooper scene, I think, was my favorite scene.
Uh-huh.
That, and I love the Terminator 2 reference because I love Terminator 2.
So how I love when movies reference extremely current movies from that time.
Yes.
So to give a little bit of context, Wayne's World came out only 7 months after Terminator 2 came out. And I'm sure that trailers and there was press behind it, but they were on top of it.
Wayne's World 2 has a beat, right? Or are we going to get to that?
Well, I was going to say Wayne's World 2 came out only 6 months after Jurassic Park came out. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yes, that is where I was going with that.
Amazing.
But
yeah.
Oh, sorry, continue.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's not crazy to think Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park are going to be movies that kind of last with us forever. But it is kind of taking a big swing to, reference those in your movie because it could very well date your movie and make it feel like it's frozen time, but it holds up so well because those movies are some of the greatest movies ever made.
Well, and it also, and I don't know if this is again putting the cart before the horse with this this conversation topic, but in Wayne's World 2, we also have an extended parody of a movie that came out 26 years earlier as they spoofed The Graduate.
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
End of Wayne's World 2.
Yeah.
So, and what I was thinking with that was, I was like, I was like, if I showed this movie to like present day teenagers, how much of it would they get? How much of it would they get because they understand like 90s culture? Because like they've studied it.
Sure, yeah.
And how much would they just not like would they, how many of them would, like, I got The Graduate reference at the time when I saw Wayne's World 2, but
I'm pretty sure I did too. And it's like, there's no reason why I should have. I think that it was maybe just more part of our collective consciousness.
Yeah, well, it's collective consciousness, which I feel like there was a lot more of that for movies where there were just some movies that everybody knew. Yeah. I don't get the sense that we have that as much anymore. I don't think that that's something that teenagers today could really identify with, though. I don't know. I might be wrong. I think about movies that came out. So let's say 20, maybe 1999. And I was like, well, you could make a Matrix reference. But
yeah, I mean, if there's just a lot of hype behind something.
Right. Like there are some things
sometimes.
I'm like, what could, but then again, it's also like there were all those like scary movie type things that came out in the early 2000s. And like everyone's got a parody scene of American Beauty and like the plastic bag and the kid with the video camera. And like, that's not gonna, that has not lasted.
What I think that what Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 both do really well. I mean, first of all, they're so tightly written. And as soon as it begins, you are in it. And it keeps you engaged every second of the way. And the references to other movies come and go very quickly. The Graduate 1 and Wayne's World 2 is a bit of a longer stretch, but also could exist on its own without it being a reference.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, seeing a dinosaur in the very quick moment that happens in Wayne's World 2, or, the T-1000 walking to the car, that's over before you know it. And if you catch it and know what it's all about, then it's great. But I think that because it gets in and out of things so fast, it's okay if something maybe didn't hit the way that it's meant to in 1992.
And there are also so many great comedies, and I think most of them come prior to this, that make references but work on their own. Blazing Saddles.
Sure.
Blazing Saddles is a movie that I saw like dozens of times before I ever watched like High Noon, which I think Blazing Saddles makes some reference to. But talking about Mel Brooks, you look at Blazing Saddles, and that's a movie that works perfectly fine without getting any of the parody, really, and just getting it in a broader sense. Whereas I don't think High Anxiety works unless you're familiar with Hitchcock.
And I don't think that High Anxiety worked for a lot of people just to begin with.
Right. Well, I mean, it worked for Hitchcock.
It worked for Hitchcock.
It worked right.
Yeah. Should we do a little synopsis for? I've got one for each Wayne's World, but for anybody who, do you want me to do them both? Yeah, sure, I'll do them both.
I think let's just do them both and talk about both of the movies.
It's fine. I kind of wrote them so they flow from one to the other. Okay.
Perfect.
A public access television show in Aurora, Illinois catches the attention of conniving young television producer named Benjamin, who sees the show as a perfect marketing stunt for a chain of arcades. The show is called Wayne's World, and it's hosted by two aimless 20-something headbangers, Wayne Campbell and Garth Algar. Wayne oozes with personality and is seen as a leader by his peers. His charisma is as magnetic off-screen as it is on, and he is quite easily able to woo Cassandra, the singer and bass player for an up-and-coming band, Crucial Taunt. Wayne doesn't just charm her with wit, he also learns her native tongue seemingly in a matter of days. However, Wayne is also quite insecure and feels threatened by the men who enter Cassandra's life who could offer her more than he can. Garth is the perfect companion for Wayne. He's nervous, insightful, and technically savvy, frequently inventing gadgets and exercising advanced computing techniques. When Wayne publicly humiliates the show's sponsor, he's fired by Benjamin and damages his relationships with both Cassandra and Garth. But with the right amount of humility, Wayne works on righting his wrongs to get back at Benjamin. Moving on to Wayne's World 2. 1 year later, Wayne and Garth move to a warehouse loft converted from an old doll factory. First of all, that sentence is just a delight to say. It's there that Wayne is visited in a dream by a spiritual guide who brings him to Jim Morrison, who's, Jesus Christ, this is so nuts, who says that Wayne's life calling is to put on a concert. He tasks Wayne to go to London and find legendary roadie Del Preston to make it happen. Meanwhile, Cassandra is cutting her first album with hot producer Bobby Kahn, who doesn't like Wayne very much. Also, Garth is exploring life outside his parents' house and meets a sultry temptress named Honey, who just may be too good to be true. I mean, that's basically it.
Well, yeah, and there's another example of like the whole thing with the quote unquote naked Indian and Jim Morrison.
Yes.
How many people have seen The Doors?
Well,
And-
I don't think that you need to have seen The Doors to enjoy what's going on there. I really don't, because I hadn't seen The Doors for years after I saw Wayne's World 2, and I enjoyed it all the same.
I
Of
guess
course,
maybe
when
I'm
you see
thinking-
The Doors, it gives it another level, but you don't need to have seen The Doors to really enjoy what's going on.
Yeah, I just feel like because The Doors was still in like part of the zeitgeist, that movie, I mean, even though that movie wasn't like a huge success, it did really find an audience, and it was marginally successful, and especially Val Kilmer's performance, very highly regarded.
Speaking of
deservedly so.
speaking of SNL movies, I watched MacGruber the other day.
Well, yes,
Val Kilmer, absolutely a delight in that.
Absolutely. So anyway, I just, when I saw that scene, I wondered again, like, all right, if I show this to somebody, today.
If you showed it to somebody today, what they're going to think is that representation of an indigenous person is awful and shameful.
Yes.
So I think that that's going to be the focus more than anything having to do with The Doors.
Right. Though I think if you've seen The Doors, you understand the connection with Jim Morrison and the whole sequence in that movie, and him like seeing the accident as a child, which I don't even know if that really happened, but in The Doors, there's context for it.
Right. So I think that, and I'm not saying that like Wayne's World 2 is great cinema. I love Wayne's World 2. I'm wearing a Del Preston shirt right now.
Wayne's World 2 is great.
I think that it is a truly remarkable movie. Yes, it does have the indigenous representation problem. That's a different discussion. We'll get to that. But I think that with all, media, whether it is a movie or a book or something that you're going to revisit throughout your life, it changes as you change. And I think that for a lot of movies, it's not just noticing different things, but it's also like who you are as a person makes you maybe identify with different characters in a different way. And maybe you just kind of interpret things differently than you did when you first saw it. And I think that could be said for Wayne's World 2, just in the way that you understand the references and as references, because it's entirely possible to watch that and not know that it's a reference to anything and that it's just a strange thing that happens in a very surreal movie, which is set up perfectly in Wayne's World 1, because that's a very surreal movie. He opens up a door to where there's people training like in a James Bond movie for no reason. It's completely bananas.
No, it's my question is more of a which, like, at what point do the references take away from it and get confusing, because of the missing context or the missing familiarity. That's all I'm kind of speculating about. Like, and I feel like you'd get that more in Wayne's World too, because like you had said earlier, a lot of like the T-1000 thing, you know, it happens and then it's over. Yeah. But we keep coming back to Jim Morrison, and I love it. I love it. I love the Sammy Davis Jr. part. Fantastic. Yeah. But like,
there's some cats I gotta hang with.
Yeah. Sammy, wait up. Also the whole, but there's also other things that like, you don't need to know who Rip Taylor is or like was.
I'm still not 100% certain who he is.
Okay, so there is a genre of celebrity that came up that existed primarily in the 60s and 70s, and these were celebrities that just were, it was like,
they were weirdos.
Him and like Charles Nelson Riley.
I imagine that he was on Hollywood Squares a lot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Charo.
Sure.
They're maybe
famous
did
for
a
being
thing.
famous. Yeah.
Right. Yes, they're so Rip Taylor, who's hilarious. I love him in this.
Yeah.
When he's talking about Jim Morrison, and I see him as more of a crooner. There's so much about, and there are also so many really clever bits that do work, and even though they might be they might toe up to the line, I really don't think I don't even actually think they toe up to. I'm thinking about like the Kevin Pollak, we'll make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the lowercase J's.
Yeah.
Which is what I do in my teaching job when I'm telling kids to do review their essay. I say, make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your lowercase J's.
And that brings me to a discussion about the lasting legacy of some of the lines in these movies. And I'm not talking about things like schwing or party on or saying not, because those are uniquely specific to Wayne's World. But crossing your T's and dotting your lowercase J's lasts and lives on its own. You are not the only person, I'm sure, who does that. I'm sure I've done it too. But also, this movie is the genesis of the joke, "That's what she said."
Right. Is it the genesis of it? Is it?
It is. I mean, I'm sure that perhaps Mike Myers had said it before, maybe amongst friends. I don't think he said it in a sketch. At least I couldn't find it in any sketches that I watched to prepare for this, which I enjoyed doing. But he certainly said it in the movie when Garth is holding up the poster of, is it Claudia Schiffer? And he's
Claudia Schiffer, yeah.
Can I put this down? I'm getting tired of holding it. That's what she said.
Yes. I heard that. And I did not think it originated with The Office. There might be people.
It was given a boom in popularity from The Office.
Right.
Yeah.
But was this the original?
From everything that I've seen, yes, it is.
Nice.
Isn't that great?
I enjoy that. Yeah. I like that
also,
fact. I don't even care if it's actually true. I'm just going to accept that as
it's true. So another thing that I want to mention is that there are even lines in these movies that aren't even jokes that have imprinted themselves onto my psyche. And I know that this is something that I shared with like our brother Scott, and maybe you and I have said this together before, but like anytime I hear about somebody named Anthony, I go, who's Anthony? Who's Anthony? My drummer. Yes. Like, it's not even a joke. It's not a joke. It's just it's just a funny moment in an amazing movie.
And Wayne's World also tapped into those things that like people notice but didn't but never really acknowledged. The camera 1, camera 2 thing, like closing one eye, closing the other.
Yeah.
Also the way that the movies use film, and Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2, doing bits like that, or the, well, you know how it goes. First they tell a friend, and then they tell two friends, and then they tell friends.
Yeah. And so on.
In fact,
and so on.
I kind of did something inspired by that in a very different context. in a production that I was directing that was using multimedia and was using slides, and it was a section.
I was say,
how
do you do that in theater? Sure, multimedia.
Yeah, no, it was slides, and it was a section where all of these reporters keep coming on and keep adding on. So I had on the slides, it just kept popping up more and more of these little boxes of little like reporters on location. Yeah.
It's brilliant, and it works, and you're in and out of it in no time at all, but it lasts an incredible impression.
It's universal, and it's the gags, like jokes like that are the type of things that don't rely on period specific knowledge. They are endlessly appealing.
I have one more thing to add to that, and then I want this to kind of lead us into a discussion, kind of going back to representation, and it's a very strange way to get into it. But I think that one of the funniest jokes in any movie ever is "I'll have the cream of some young guy." It is so funny. They're ordering Chinese food. Wayne makes that joke. I certainly didn't get it when I first saw the movie, but believe me, as soon as I was old enough to understand it, I thought this is the funniest joke ever made. And in that, it was brought up in that Josh Gad show from the weird year of 2020, where he asks about that line, and they were saying, like, first of all, they had to add in a moment where there's no dialogue because they wanted to leave room for people to laugh in the theater and not miss anything. And so that's why you just see Garth like laughing about it. And they had an alt line for it in case they couldn't get away with saying, "I'll have the cream of some young guy." And it was, "I'll have the cream of some guy hung low," which is so good. It's so good. And I think that what the Wayne's World movies do in a really tricky way is they do get away with, I guess, playing with language stereotypes. And it's like, it doesn't work with other people. And in some cases, it doesn't work at all. But, casting Tia Carrera and giving her this role of this complete badass in Cassandra, and giving us this moment where Wayne very respectfully like learns Cantonese and has this conversation with her. And I know that like they worked with language coaches, and when they have their conversation in Cantonese, they were very careful to make sure to get everything right and be very accurate and respectful. In Wayne's World 2, it's kind of towing a line when, Wayne meets Cassandra's father, and they have their dialogue in Cantonese that moves over into being dubbed in English. And which, first of all, big shout out to James Hong, just the absolute greatest always for being Cassandra's dad. But, and they do their martial arts kind of duel, and it's tricky. That's where things get a little tricky.
Yep. Again, it's a dated reference. They're parodying those 70s, Shaw Brothers.
Because it's parodying the films and the way that the films were dubbed, it's kind of like, okay, but also it's
but if you don't have that context, though.
But if you don't have that context, it doesn't work that great. So,
no, and
it's... Yeah. And
troublesome.
Yeah, it is troublesome. And, especially coming off of our last episode where we talked about smoke signals and how important representation is for the indigenous people of this land, to have the, as they say in the movie, weird naked Indian as the spiritual guide, it makes it, hard to watch these days. There are certainly bigger offenders, but it's like, I wish that would have been done differently in hindsight.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, Larry Sellers, not Larry Sellers of The Big Lebowski, but Larry Sellers, who played that character, he's done a lot of work in similar roles. He was a very similar type of thing in Like Father, Like Son, which we've covered on this podcast.
Yeah,
And,
yes.
he's done a lot of things like Walker, Texas Ranger, and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, where, he does play a lot of these stereotypical indigenous characters. And,
I mean, that's what was available for the longest time.
yes, and I will say he is in Killers of the Flower Moon. So I still haven't seen it. I'm excited to see it, especially I'll be on the lookout for him because it's like, I think that looking at his career, it's almost like this is the journey of how far the representation has come.
Right.
Not to say that Killers of the Flower Moon is some perfect example of representation, but it, from everything I hear, is a really big step. Martin Scorsese is obviously an Italian American and not claiming to be anything but that, but
he's not exactly although I did read that the focus of the movie as he was researching the true story behind it, the focus of the movie went off of the FBI, because that's one side of the story is the FBI, and focused more on the Osage tribe,
Right.
and the Osage people. And so I haven't seen it either. I'm really
from what I
looking forward.
understand, it's handled with respect.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's all I can really say, not having seen it.
Right. But for an actor like Larry Sellers, who's come from a time when if you were an indigenous actor and you wanted to work, and it goes back, Hattie McDaniel said this, said the same thing, and it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do this the best that I can, and I'm gonna do, like, represent the people the best I can. It's nice that there's this moment now, and I don't want to actually, I heard moment and don't want to call it a moment, because it should be something that is ongoing, but this change, this evolution where we are seeing much more realistic, well-rounded, dynamic representation of marginalized communities in general, but especially indigenous people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, and I guess, in this conversation, we should also, there's also kind of the, I don't know, I guess misogyny factor. And I'm thinking specifically with the character of Stacy.
Sure. It's like, unless you're Cassandra and you are a woman, you are dumb, or you are a problem.
Or a quote unquote psycho hose beast.
Yes.
Right. And
Absolutely.
and a lot of talk that was casually thrown around at the time that now we know is minimalizing and is disrespectful of someone's identity. So
100%.
especially someone who probably has some unresolved problems like Stacy. As played by the wonderful, speaking of Twin Peaks, Lara Flynn Boyle.
Yeah, and all that said, the gun rack scene is genius.
Gun rack. The pronunciation of
Yeah.
Like, as I can't even do it the way he does it. It's
Canadian.
Perfect. Yes, this is true.
So, a couple of things that I wanted to point out. So first of all, Ed O'Neill, who plays the manager of Stan Mikita's Donuts, he was in a Wayne's World sketch back in, I think, 89. And he played a very cynical high school driver's ed teacher. And it's like the blueprint for his character in the movie. And I love that Ed O'Neill is, part of this fabric. He was part of Josh Gad's thing, and it was so great to see him, especially next to the suck cut guy.
Yeah.
But he was fantastic. So another thing that I love is how Wayne and Garth, yes, they're these headbangers. It's never at all indicated that they are into alcohol or drugs.
No.
The only thing you see them consume are coffee and donuts. Like they just are part of that subculture.
Garth has the big blue drink when they're out with
yes.
Benjamin.
You do see them have that one beverage, that fish bowl. And but they are also completely philosophical, and they frequently reference philosophers, and it's just one of those like weird things where it's like, oh, on the surface you just see these, you know, guys who like to say party on and excellent and everything and say schwing to posters of Claudia Schiffer, but then they like bust out this super philosophical thing. And there's this one line that I loved from Garth when there's the whole sequence at Stan Mikita's where he's talking about his dream woman, the woman who works there, who has no identity other than dream woman or whatever. And when so before the whole like foxy lady dream sequence, before I think Cassandra says, why don't you go talk to her? You know, Wayne has done his whole thing of just like, I say hurl, if you blow chunks and if you spew and she bolts, it was never meant to be. If you blow chunks and she comes back, she's yours. He says, I'm not ready yet. I got to be comfortable with me first.
Yes.
And that's a line that slips through the cracks because it's like right after this whole thing about hurling and then this foxy lady dream sequence kind of thing. And it's just him being very in touch and you know, self-reflective and, you know, saying things that people go to therapy for years to try to like figure out for themselves. And he just comes out with this thing like that's sandwiched between these two hilarious moments in the movie. But well, I love that.
He's very, you see this in Wayne's World too, especially, but he's very childlike.
Well, Dan, what we learn in Wayne's World 2 is that canonically speaking, during Wayne's World 1, he did not have pubes.
Correct. You didn't tell him about my pubes, did you?
Of course not. Oh my God, that's so funny. And that's like in the trailer too. I watched the trailer and I was like, wow, that was a trailer moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, and Garth finally got pubes. Such a weird moment. And also, you know, because I watched a lot of the Wayne's World sketches. So in the movie, we talked about this before. We meet Alice Cooper, and he goes into this whole, you know, you see one thing, you expect one thing, but then he goes into this whole thing about the origins of the name Milwaukee and the Miliwake, which also is showing respect to the indigenous culture in the area.
Absolutely.
Certainly have to mention that. But when they are interviewing in an episode that also features Tom Hanks as Aerosmith's roadie, interview where they interview the band Aerosmith, they ask a few questions just about like being on the road and what it's like to be a band, and then he asks them about their views about the potential fall of the Soviet Union. And Steven Tyler goes into this very well thought out, very articulate, essentially like thesis on what could potentially be happening. Cause this is, I think 89 or something, what could be happening for, the Soviet Union. And it's tonally the same joke as Alice Cooper's, different subject matter, but the way that it's kind of like you see one thing, you think one thing, but then they kind of give you something completely different. And it makes these headbangers, these metal guys seem like, it makes you forget that like all the things that you thought about people who look a certain way. Like you think like, oh, they're just dumb, drunk rockers. They don't have any real thoughts. And certainly those are scripted moments, but yeah, I think that we've come to realize about, especially like Alice Cooper, it's like, yeah, it's just a real guy who, he looks a certain way for the effect of it all. He's putting on a character.
Something he figured out works for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, so just to go back to that joke, among others, we have not mentioned, and absolutely should be giving some credit to Bonnie and Terry Turner,
Absolutely.
who were writers at SNL, who also co-wrote the screenplay for Wayne's World as well as Wayne's World 2.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, with Mike Myers.
With Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, absolutely genius. And I mean, this is one of the earlier Saturday Night Live movies. I mean, Blues Brothers was the first.
Well, I think Blues Brothers. So I was thinking about this, and I guess officially Blues Brothers is the first, but I don't know how much of a part like Lorne Michaels had in Blues Brothers, and it also does not. It was not until like one of the VHS re-releases that they had the Blues Brothers standing against a vaguely sky-like background.
As we've talked about before, SNL movies, the posters from the cover art for the DVDs and VHS tapes, it's the main characters against a blue sky with puffy white clouds. It's that way for Wayne's World, Wayne's World 2, Coneheads, it's Pat. Stuart Saves His Family maybe has that. No, it's just him holding the weight of the world on his shoulders. Yeah,
the weight of the world, right? But yeah, it was. So Wayne's World
MacGruber does not have it either.
No,
Superstar.
Neither Superstar kind of does. Kind of. There's a blue background.
It's a blue background with white, but it's not sky and clouds.
And does the ladies? I don't think the Ladies Man does.
Oh yeah, the Ladies
either.
Man.
Night at the Roxbury does not.
No, Ladies Man. So I guess it's really just Wayne's World 2, Coneheads, and It's Pat. It's Pat does it, right?
No, actually, I don't think It's Pat does. I think It's Pat has a white background, but also It's Pat wasn't a Warner Brother or a Paramount production. So,
it's just Pat against a question mark.
And I love how
is it really just Wayne's World 2, and Coneheads?
I think it is.
Okay.
But it's still fun. I love how Wayne's World opens with it opens with like the Paramount logo, but the music that you didn't get on most Paramount movies. And I always associated, I was like, oh, okay, so it's a comedy, so it's got it. But then was it like Fatal Attraction that also had it, that like dun 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 dun, as like the stars are flying in around the mountain. So I always thought it was just for comedies, and then I think it was something like Fatal Attraction that also had it. And it was like, well, that just doesn't feel right.
So just real quick, I know these are not SNL movies, but Tommy Boy and Black Sheep both do have the blue sky, white puffy clouds. Black Sheep having been directed by Penelope Spheris as well.
And those were Lorne Michaels.
They were Lorne Michaels. It was SNL cast members.
Yeah. Also, speaking of in Wayne's World, this is also it. I believe it is the first Rob Lowe comedic turn.
Sure,
and definitely the prototype for his part in Tommy Boy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he nails it. He's a great villain to the wacky main characters.
Oh yeah, he's wonderful in this. But he's I would say, a Lorne Michaels regular, has become a Lorne Michaels regular, and Christopher Walken as well, who's hosted Saturday Night Live many times.
Yeah, bringing up this Josh Gad thing again, but they were talking about Rob Lowe making his comedic film debut in this, and he mentioned he had done Saturday Night Live, and he was in. I think one of the other like Mike Myers sketches, and Mike Myers just it's like, oh, he can do comedy. He gets it. And they even mentioned how somebody even said, I think Penelope Spheris was just like, didn't he just get in trouble? And Rob Lowe was just like, he's like, yeah, and that's why they could get me so cheap. That was like Lorne Michaels was just like, well, he'll be cheap. So
yes, I've heard that. I've heard that before.
And to say that Rob Lowe got in trouble is a bit of an understatement. He's a sleazebag. moving on.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So you've got Rob Lowe, Christopher Walken, Brian Doyle Murray.
Brian Doyle Murray as Noah, so good. Colleen Camp as his wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lee Turgeson, who pops up as one of the guys, the one who always says "I love you." You know who I love in Wayne's World? Can we talk about Kurt Fuller?
Okay, Kurt Fuller, so good. He's such a great, like, scumbaggy lackey.
But his turn is so great. And it felt even more rewarding because I watched Ghostbusters 2 recently.
Oh, yeah. He's perfect. He was so great in that. I was thinking recently, it's like, man, I miss Kurt Fuller. Like,
right.
You know,
the great Kurt Fuller roles. No Holds Barred is another one. But I love Kurt Fuller's his turn in this. Another one of those wonderful lines that is you could just use again and again. Like, Benjamin is nobody's friend. If Benjamin was a flavor of ice cream, he'd be pralines and dick.
Yeah, praline and dick. So good. Yeah.
And Kurt Fuller in that scene is like, but no, Benjamin's my friend. At the end,
that also reminds me of, when they're talking about how Cassandra's a babe, and if she was a president, she'd be Abraham Lincoln, and then Wayne goes like, she would be called La Renard, and she'd be hunted with only her cunning to protect her. I love that. You're talking about Lee Turgeson, who's amazing. I also want to give a shout out to Michael DeLuise, son of Dom DeLuise, who's just another one of the crew guys.
But he's great doing the countdown.
Was he doing the countdown, or was that Lee Turgeson doing the countdown?
I thought it was Lee Turgeson. Oh no, Michael DeLuise is the one with the camera when Colleen Camp is standing over by him.
Yeah.
And he's like, do I scare you? Do you want me to?
No, Lee Turgeson might not be the one who requested the hand job, but he's the one who got it. Also, a joke I maybe didn't get when it first came out, but then as I grew older, I grew with the movie grew with me, and boy, oh boy, is that good. Meatloaf as Tiny, the bouncer at Gasworks. Chris Farley as Chris Farley.
Two different roles,
two different movies. He plays the security guard that knows way too much about Frank Sharp's whereabouts and his travel plans, and then also as the roadie who has a really bad relationship with his father in Wayne's World 2.
Who's also another one of those really quick references that you don't need to get is the I got no place else to go reference to Officer and a Gentleman.
And I don't think I ever realized that was a reference to that. But I love it all the same.
Oh yeah, that's one of those references that you absolutely don't need to.
Yeah.
Because it's Farley being Farley. And
it's Chris Farley being just the greatest. And
was Ralph Brown who plays Del Preston.
Oh yeah, talk Wayne's World 2.
Dude, shout out to that guy.
Oh, that's my old lady. Obviously Christopher Walken is so good. We also have, Kevin Pollak is amazing. Kim Basinger, so good. As Honey Hornay. We've got Drew Barrymore as Björgen Kerrigan, who I think that for me was just like a girls are pretty moment, growing up in like 1993, 94. It was just like, what are girls? After seeing Björgen Kerrigan from the Schmiergen Fjord.
Kerrigan. Yeah, right. And I mean, we're gonna keep going down the line here?
Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
As the better actor.
The better actor.
Ted McGinley as Mr. Scream.
Love Ted McGinley as Mr. Scream.
Tim Meadows as Sammy Davis Jr., Bob Odenkirk and Robert Smigel as the Geeks.
The Geeks backstage. Harry Shearer as
Handsome Dan.
Handsome Dan.
We've got the Gin Blossoms.
What do you? Oh, they're getting closer every time. He's not paying any attention to what they're saying in the interview. Yeah. And I forget what it is that they say. But hey, and he jumps in their classic. Another SNL veteran, Harry.
That's
Shearer.
true. You know, I'm looking at the cast list right now on Wikipedia, and I didn't realize this, and this might not be true. I have no reason to believe that it isn't true. But you know, when they're in London and there's the whole bit about how Paramount wouldn't actually send, like, it's amazing that Paramount actually sent us to London. It just shows the backs of them and they're clearly like weird heights and everything. Dan, do you know the comedian Rich Fulcher?
No.
I think that if you saw him, you'd be like, that guy looks familiar. Oh no, he's very, very funny. Rich Fulcher is great. And I guess he plays Garth's body double when they're in the London scenes. And for anybody who's a Rich Fulcher fan, that's I guess some interesting trivia. I had no idea. He was on the Mighty Boosh. Mighty Boosh was a big thing for him, being the American in the Mighty Boosh. But he's done a ton of voice acting. Just a comedy guy. He's just a comedy guy who's been around. So that's interesting because that predates a lot of his other work. So that's fascinating. Oh, Jim Downey is the dubbed voice of Jeff Wayne.
Right.
Jim Downey, the SNL head writer. So
and then
cool.
as part of Aerosmith, Bradley Whitford.
Just regular Brad Whitford of Aerosmith. Yeah,
that's a damn shame. I thought I learned something new and awesome about Bradley Whitford that he was in Aerosmith. I would love to. I would buy a ticket to go see Aerosmith if Bradley Whitford was playing with them.
Yeah, right. I was really big into Aerosmith, and I don't know if it was because of Wayne's World 2. I definitely had the Wayne's World 2 soundtrack, but you know, right around that time, I mean, Aerosmith was big. So to say that it's because of one thing or another.
Get a Grip was
Get a Grip.
Big. They were making I mean, not really a comeback because they had hits going through the 80s and 90s.
I think that they just were getting a different audience at the time because their music was being used in like Mrs. Doubtfire and, you know, a lot of more family friendly movies. So I think that they were just getting a new audience around that time.
Well, also, and the videos were huge. The
Silverstone,
Alicia
Tyler,
Silverstone videos. Like, I remember those were really big, and Get a Grip was. I mean, that was just like a hot time for music. And not like 92, 93.
But also, and the actual CD of this is seen in Wayne's World 2. But the like Aerosmith Greatest Hits album, that's like the red cover. Yeah, that was huge. I feel like everybody had that.
Pretty much.
Yeah. They sent it to houses with samples of Tide.
Right.
It was that year's Frampton Comes Alive. Another amazing joke from the first Wayne's World.
Absolutely. And a joke that's one of those that I'm like, I didn't really get that, but it's funny and it makes sense to me.
Sure.
I mean, it was like, look, when I was like 12, I would laugh at Dennis Miller, and I didn't understand Dennis Miller's references. I just knew they were funny, or they sounded funny.
I don't think anybody to this date has ever understood fully a Dennis Miller reference, but he is truly the king of references.
Yes,
David Cross.
Yes.
I remember when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, something like that. I saw a tutor. And it was just because I was like, you know, not good at school. And so I saw this like tutor and I would, you know, read books just out loud in her presence. And she was like, you can read whatever you want. And I don't know, did I get this from the library? Did you have it? And I just like got my hands on it. But it was like a Dennis Miller rants book. And
yeah. Hold on.
Do you have it like in the shelf behind you? But I was like, you know, 12 years old, 11 years old. And I was like reading this out loud to this lady and her golden retriever. But so anyway, Dennis Miller, it's not like I ever understood any of the rants fully, but I did love. Oh, you're holding Dennis Miller Rants right there. That's probably the very copy. It might.
It is
smell
the
like,
very.
It's probably got Oreo and Cheez-It stains from my grubby little fingers from when I was 11.
I definitely got this at one of those like discount bookshops that we would stop at on the way down to Sea Island, Georgia.
Oh my
over
God!
the summer.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
But I did love Dennis Miller's stand-up. Even if I didn't understand all of it, and granted, his persona was different at the time than it is now. Although I'm sure that if I read some of those rants, I'd probably be like, "Ooh, he was telling us who he was all along." But be that as it may.
Yeah. But still, but sometimes, yeah, he wasn't always. Sometimes he was talking about things that we could all agree on.
That's true. Dan, something else that I was thinking of while watching this. Well, first of all, okay, did you watch the first Wayne's World for this preparation on a DVD, or did you watch it on Max?
I watched it on Max.
Did you notice that something changed? You're looking at me like no. Dan, they restored the audio from when he's playing Stairway in the guitar store.
Oh shit!
He's actually playing Stairway now. They must have gotten the rights.
John, I did notice it, but I didn't notice. I just thought there was something. There was definitely something when I watched that scene, and when he played it, I was like, oh, I don't remember him actually playing it or something like that.
In every version of it that I ever remember seeing, I don't know if theatrically it had him actually playing that do 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 the beginning of Stairway to Heaven.
He definitely plays beginning of Stairway to Heaven. Yep.
They restored the audio. It's amazing. I couldn't believe my ears. I kind of want to, task like our brother Scott to watch it and be like, tell me what's different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just that scene is that's really, man, it's like, now that you mention it, yes, I heard that and it did strike me.
And then you get the iconic "No stairway, denied."
Denied. Not today, my good man.
I'm feeling saucy.
I'm feeling saucy, right?
Yeah. So I also wanted to mention that, I was, this came out in 92, so I was 9 years old when this came out, or I was about to turn 9 years old when this came out. It came out a few weeks before I turned 9. And I remember in my elementary school I think it was like, I don't know if it was every Friday, every other Friday, but we had a gym cafetorium. There was just a multi-purpose grand room that became a cafeteria, the gym, or there's a stage where there would be assemblies and plays and stuff like that. And while we were eating lunch every other Friday or whatever, there was a talent show that was put on. There was a staff, like a lunch lady who kind of orchestrated the whole thing, and then people would get up and do something. I remember
it's like Wayne Stock.
It's like Wayne Stock, except it was terrible. I remember I did a lip sync dance routine with my best friend at the time, Paul Marmo. Shout out Paul Marmo, wherever you are, to the Weird Al parody of The Right Stuff, The White Stuff.
Oh, the white
about
stuff.
Oreos.
Nice. About Oreos.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we did that, but the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because there were two girls in my class who they mostly kept to themselves. They were, best friends with each other. They weren't really part of any cliques going on at the time or anything. They were just kind of their own quiet selves. And I remember them being introduced by the lunch lady that they were going to be performing, and as she said it, Wayne's World. And what they did is they put on Bohemian Rhapsody and just headbanged. They kind of swayed a little bit and then they headbanged. And it's burned in my brain. I'll never forget it.
That is classic.
I love that it was for people who didn't know who Queen was, that's what it was. It was this moment, this trailer moment from this, very popular movie that like we didn't understand a single reference in it, but man, did we love it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there in that scene there was really nothing to get, and it was just the music, and it was them headbanging, and Phil in the back with the whole "Let Me Go" part, just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Well, but
for that, it was just, men being silly and enjoying themselves and just being their true selves. And in a way that you don't see a lot of men being depicted in movies. And it's just these 5 friends on their way to go do something and just completely rocking out to their favorite song.
Well, it establishes their characters and really endears their characters to the audience.
Well, also, it's a perfect example. That song is a perfect example of who Wayne and Garth are. It is brilliant. It is very smart. It references, scientists and philosophers, and it's an opera of itself.
Old
but
literature.
Also, it has this like kick-ass guitar solo that you headbang to. Like, it is them, perfectly them.
That's a really that's spot on. I want to add to that.
Yeah.
The scene where they decide to pick up Phil is also like really telling about them, in that they're like, all right, here's our friend. He's not in good shape. Let's help him out. Let's give him a ride. And, I give you the no spew guarantee.
If you're going to spew into this.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Another classic line that one can, I'm sure I've said it at some point to someone who was going to throw up.
100 times. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Yeah. Just such a delight. Dan, we're already well over an hour into this discussion. We've alluded to some ideas for things that we would want to do with the Wayne's World movies. In the Josh Gad Zoom thing, Penelope Spheris says that 2 times a month people tell her their ideas for a Wayne's World 3. Dan, what is your idea for a new iteration of Wayne's World? And I should say, I will also say, we have had them come back in like Super Bowl ads and different SNL things. So that's that. Go on.
I really tried to think of a plot for a Wayne's World 3. The best thing that I could think about is was like a teaser trailer that, because the initials are WW3, and it would spoof Oppenheimer. And that's all. That was like all I had. That's my only note, is spoof Oppenheimer. But I like, what I can say is I would be interested in. I don't know. John, I was thinking about a plot for Wayne's World 3 where Wayne Campbell he gets older and he works in TV, and as it changes, and then he gets pushed out in favor of younger and newer. And then it occurred to me, it reminded me of kind of part of the plot of the Pentaveret.
Oh yeah.
Where Mike Myers is the reporter who like loses his job and needs to do something big to get his job back. Because that's totally the direction I was going in with Wayne's World 3, where like maybe Wayne and Garth have lost touch, and they need to reconnect. You also don't want to, I guess you could go that direction. You want to kind of avoid doing some of the same things that Bill and Ted Face the Music did, though. I think Wayne's World, Bill and Ted Face the Music, it involves so much science fiction and different direction.
Yeah.
They also never like lose touch, and I see Wayne and Garth in Wayne's World 3 definitely not being that like attached at the hip, and maybe like they're, I feel like when we meet them in Wayne's World 3, they're normal like guys in their 60s
Yeah.
who have not necessarily lost, but they've maybe said goodbye to that part of themselves.
Right.
And I mean, look, maybe it is, I'm trying to think of like which band it could be at this point. Like, I feel like Aerosmith's like last concert would be a, like that's gotta happen. Like that's one of those things that if it hasn't already happened, I feel like that's happening sooner rather than later. But something like that, something that would draw them out. We could come back to all the ideas about how now, okay, everyone loves all these old documentaries about these weird random things that happened a long time ago. Everything from stuff like Winnebago Man to other things. So you could have a plot about that where someone wants to make a documentary for Hulu about Wayne Stock. What was this thing, Wayne Stock, that like all of a sudden Aerosmith showed up in this little town and played a show. I feel like that's kind of cliche, and I think that whatever Mike Myers, because I did enjoy the Pentaverate.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. So I do feel like Mike Myers has some gas left in the tank, whereas a few years ago I might not have felt that way. But I think Mike Myers, if it's something that he wants to do, and also and Dana Carvey as well, and worth pointing out right now, we're recording this. It's November 27th, and Dana Carvey's son Dex just recently passed away.
Very, very upsetting, and just an absolute tragedy.
We want to, of course, not that Dana Carvey or any of the Carvey family are listening, but just in case, sending out our thoughts to them.
Yeah,
as a brief tangent, I just remember Dana Carvey, a stand-up special he did that I really liked. One of my favorite
classic
bits,
Dana Carvey stand-up special,
where he did the kid Naked Time.
And he's talking about Dex. Yeah.
So,
Ping.
but also, so yeah. So of course, Dana Carvey, getting him
just
involved.
real quick. Dana Carvey, and I want to, does he have two sons? But I believe that he and Dex,
two sons,
and his other son, had a podcast together that was kind of like a Twilight Zone-y kind of a thing. So, I should look up what that was called. Off the top of my head can't remember.
Yeah. I forget what it's called as well, but I remember hearing about that. So of course, for Wayne's World 3 to happen, and I've read in a couple of pieces that were posted earlier this year that Dana Carvey and Tia Carrera had both expressed interest in reprising their roles.
Oh, okay.
So it would be interesting.
The podcast was called Fantastic.
Okay, yes. Wayne's World 3, I don't know what it would be, but I feel like it could be something, and it could be something good. John, what are your ideas?
Well, thinking about Wayne and Garth, they were always playing younger. I think that if I had to assume how old they were, it'd probably be 22, 23 is how old the characters were probably supposed to be around that time. And so you would have to figure that they are in their mid 50s by now. And I do love the idea of a sequel where, maybe Wayne Stock did put Aurora on the map, and Aurora, Illinois is just like now like a major metropolitan area. It's a cultural hub. because, starting with this one festival, and maybe it's even overtaken Chicago as being like the place to go in Illinois. And and I love the idea. It's something that I didn't care so much for about seeing them kind of bring back Wayne and Garth for different sketches or commercials or whatever, is that they're still dressed exactly the same. They're just clearly a lot older. And I would love to see like what would those characters be like now? Like how would they be different? How would they have changed with the times? And there are, ways to kind of bring them back into kind of like the metal world, or just like the hard rock world. I think they're less maybe metal and more just like hard rock, in a way that like feels authentic to who they are as thoughtful, like intelligent people. And maybe Wayne is teaching somewhere. I don't know. I wasn't thinking plots necessarily, but scenarios.
As soon as you started, I was like, what if Wayne is the mayor of Aurora?
He could very easily be the mayor of Aurora, the cultural laureate, perhaps. Like, there's something else about him. I mean, maybe he's also running Channel 10. Like, there are ways that
I could see Garth doing that. Or
Garth, I think, is because he is so behind the scene. I mean, he's the co-host of a show, but like because he's kind of more of like the brains and less the mouth. I could see him, being more of like the architect behind, the enhancements of Channel 10. But yeah,
well, or what if Garth? Like, what if the rift between them is that like Garth left Aurora? What if Garth is working at NASA? Like, why would Garth not be doing something like that?
I mean, he completely reconfigured all the satellites to beam Cassandra's performance in Wayne's basement to specifically
directly to
Frank Sharp's limo.
Yeah. Exactly. So why, or so really, Garth would be working for the NSA. So
yeah,
that actually, that's where you'd get your comedy is, Garth's working for the NSA or the CIA or one of those organizations. Oh my God, it would be.
Yeah, I would say, and maybe somebody's trying to bring back Wayne Stock and do a Wayne Stock 2024. What's up?
Hear me out. So Garth, so all right. So Garth has left Aurora. He's disappeared. He has fallen off the map. He comes back to Aurora for their high school reunion, and he reconnects with Wayne, who doesn't know that Garth is an assassin, who's there to take. And it's an extended Grosse Pointe Blank reference. It's just an extended, he's there to take out Cassandra.
You know what's kind of funny is like, I can tell that your perception of these movies is that they are platforms for spoofs of different movies.
No. Well, not just because, not just because I'm jokingly suggesting a Grosse Pointe Blank.
No. Well, first of all, why would somebody spoof Grosse Pointe Blank? I mean, we love it, but it's not like a graduate level classic.
No. I don't think it's just especially the original Wayne's World. We could talk about all of the other platforms of the original Wayne's World that were just pure satire. The product placement scene, genius,
brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's so many other things that we're not talking about. The music, like a Crucial Taunt, is like that cover.
They really wail.
They really wail. The shitty Beatles.
I've got the poster right behind me. Yeah. Jolly Green Giants. Shitty Beatles. Great name. Terrible band.
So you've got so many so many great aspects of this movie that have nothing to do with the references. Although there's another reference that I thought about that is brilliant and wonderful, and I love it, and it's the Laverne and Shirley.
The Laverne and Shirley one, right. How could you forget that? Which you could have never seen Laverne and Shirley ever and still just enjoy the fact that they are doing something weird where you're just like, I don't get it, but I love it.
I don't know. It's hard to say because I knew Laverne and Shirley going in.
I mean, I don't think that I had ever seen at that point an episode of Laverne and Shirley.
Oh,
but like,
you must have. Yeah.
Not consciously. I know that I've seen it since, having become a Michael McKean fan, but I think that
it was on.
I was way more familiar with like Happy Days, and I mean, I don't know about Mork and Mindy so much, but like
that's a 90-minute block right there.
Yeah, no, but that's a great moment on their way to see Alice Cooper. What are we doing? We got backstage passes to Alice Cooper.
Right.
So good.
But anyway, kidding about the Grosse Pointe Blank, but I do think it would be like it's funny though, because there are other films that came out in the past that would have been like, it would have been fun if they had done Wayne's World 3 in the late 90s to see them do something with Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, I could have seen a how do you like them apples kind of a thing. I feel like now, even though there are movies that will probably stand the test of time and be memorable, I don't think that they're worthy of satire in the way that Jurassic Park or Terminator 2, had these elements to them that could be spoofed in a surreal, self-referential, doesn't fit into any category kind of a movie.
Well, and in a broader sense where they're not being as specific, I feel like anything that you're going to spoof today is going to be very like Avengers or Fast and Furious. It's going to be very specific to that.
I
thing.
feel like, and this is one where who would have known at the time, but I could have seen them doing some sort of like Midsommar kind of a thing. There are certain movies where there are. I could see movies that we have now come to realize have these, visual elements that are kind of everlasting. Whether you've seen Midsommar or not, you're probably aware of the look with all the flowers.
Yes.
Or the,
you could do that.
Yeah. But at the
Fight
time
Club.
when it was coming out. Right. But that was also, was that 99? Yeah.
99. But that one is still, people like high school kids know that movie.
Well, it's too bad Meatloaf is no longer with us. We could have Tiny reprising this role. Yeah.
Tiny had bitch tits.
So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything that you could really do like that's coming out. Like the way that they captured these movies that like probably hadn't even been out yet when they were filming this and just knew like, Robert Patrick walking the way that he walks and saying, "Have you seen this boy?" is going to hit. Or I mean, Jurassic Park, I think everybody at the time knew what that was going to do. We all knew like, okay, this is going to be amazing. Our lives are forever changed. This will hold up forever. Like we all just kind of knew that.
Yeah. And I actually think that kind of shift where that if there was a Wayne's World 3 that wouldn't be as much of an option. I think that's good for Wayne's World 3. I think a teaser, a spoof in a teaser is fine, but to have a movie that's just like a straight up comedy about these two characters, and you could still add that surreal aspect of it, but I almost don't want to see that. Like I almost want to see like a drama. Well, I just want to see like a what happened, like what when we pick up with these friends 30 years later, where are they? What are they doing? And how does that connect to who they were 30 years ago?
Yeah. Well, in order for there to be another Wayne's World movie, it needs to have the same spirit and design of the other two, where they break the fourth wall all the time. They are telling you this is a movie. They have text on screen telling you that it's a gratuitous sex scene or an Oscar clip,
Yeah.
things like that. Both of those movies have those elements where it's just like, oh, we're just supposed to walk by here with this plate of glass, and I just have to stack these watermelons, and that guy has got the chickens, and
they
our
just
job
walk back
here
and
is
forth
done.
with the-
Those kinds of things can only happen in a Wayne's World movie, and for that to happen, let's say 2024, how do you do that now without it seeming like maybe you're complaining about the way that movies have to be made now, or how so many other people have ripped off the style that hasn't worked, or like, how do you do that in a way that feels true to who they are while still seeming like something fresh? That's the
Right.
tricky thing. I mean, these two movies, they came out one after the other, back to back, like really fast. And so, the
Irish
movie
twins.
system, the movie system was still the same. It's so different now. And that's kind of the tricky thing. Going back to what they could, kind of spoof a little bit. I think it's kind of safe if they were to spoof something from a bigger director like a Quentin Tarantino or a Martin Scorsese, but like,
Well, or like spoofing TV, spoofing like series, spoofing like Netflix series. I think they're like some shows like Stranger Things.
yeah.
I think that's more of a zeitgeist thing than like Killers of the Flower Moon. This isn't
No,
1988 where like Rain Man's the number one movie.
No, I was thinking more of just like, like a Rick Dalton, move or something, not like a serious drama kind of a thing.
No.
Yeah.
No. I know, but
Because I mean, they were able to do that with The Doors, but it's like, I think that because Oliver Stone being as controversial as he was, and taking this movie where it's like, this movie is taking itself so seriously, we have to knock the wind out of it a little bit. That is something that could have been done then, that like, how do you do that now? And I think that it also does have to do with the sensibilities being different about, movies being made to state a purpose. Whereas for something like The Doors, it's like, this is this, about this band with this guy who, let's say he had this traumatic experience as a child that's completely shaped the rest of his life. And I don't know, like for a movie like The Doors, you could do that, but movies just are made differently now.
right, and there's less of a common awareness of things. I think entertainment is more fragmented, and people can kind of silo themselves off with the entertainment that they like. And
also, it's like, maybe you're right. Maybe Oppenheimer is the kind of movie where you could do that. Maybe it is something about biopics or something that's, true to life, and not focusing on things like the bomb necessarily, but the moments of like Einstein and Robert Downey Jr. maybe, that like poking fun at like that element of it, rather than,
I mean, looking at doing the look back at Wayne's stock in a similar way that they do Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Have hearings about all of the money that the city of Aurora lost back in 1993.
I don't know. It's definitely a fun thought experiment, and I'm curious to know if any of our listeners have thoughts themselves. If you're still listening, an hour and 39 minutes into this thing, please email us.
It's longer than a Wayne's World movie now.
Okay, I know I talk about this podcast a lot, but the Action Boys podcast, Stanger, Rogers, Gabris, they talk about a 90-minute movie for 3.5 hours, and it's solid gold every time. So anyway, I'd love to hear what everybody thinks. Please email us, ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. You can also check out our link tree in this episode's description for some more good stuff. Dan, do you want to tell everybody what we're doing on our next episode?
And where we are going, and that is to the state of Indiana, which I believe is actually known as the Hoosier State, and we will be appropriately watching Hoosiers, the basketball classic starring Gene Hackman, Barbara Hershey, and Dennis Hopper. And have you ever seen Hoosiers before?
Never seen it, but I'm looking forward to correcting that this week.
I'm looking forward to talking to you about Hoosiers, a rare entry into the sports genre for us. Not even a sports comedy here.
No, this is new territory for us.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be something else, and Gene Hackman does not disappoint. So excited to be visiting Indiana and talking about Hoosiers.
Well, Dan, as you are traveling to Milwaukee, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.